Your expected approach time 3-4, approach button 17, the altimeter 2997.
Hello and welcome back to the DCS Situation Report, where we discuss news and information about DCS World. It's a beautiful sunny day here in the Twin Cities, the first really decent spring day we've had, and I'm inside writing a script. It's important though, because we have a snippet of information about the Eurofighter this week on what is a pretty short newsletter from the Eagle Dynamics team. So let's do some speculation as we wait for more comprehensive news from Heatblur and True Grit about one of the most eagerly anticipated modules outside of the Phantom F4. The first inference that we can make is that things must be chugging along fairly productively if they are willing to share some news. According to the newsletter, Heatblur and True Grit have spent considerable development time on reverse engineering and understanding the performance of the aircraft systems. Stay tuned, it says, for more details. In addition to a single image of the cockpit area, which is rendered but not textured, we also saw an image of the Iris-T, which is a mainstay of the aircraft's offensive weapons and effectively the equivalent of an AIM-9 Sidewinder. If Wikipedia, however, is to be believed, the Iris-T is in fact a superior weapon over the AIM-9, which should see it have better ECM resistance, flare suppression, and longer head-on firing ranges than its counterpart. How these capacities are modeled in the game, of course, is still to be seen. The newsletter described that Heatblur continues to use CFD as an integral tool to verify and validate flight models and flight control laws. This is a key part of ensuring that the DCS Eurofighter meets the high bar of realism required for an authentic flying and combat experience. Again, we can only make inferences and guesses as to how things are going, but the fact that modeling work is being done on the module is positive news, especially since we haven't seen any similar revelations on the F4 Phantom. Remember that we were told that the F4 module was a likely 2022 release, with the Eurofighter coming sometime after that. Don't expect a short turnaround between projects though. I'm not expecting any properly accessible intel until perhaps 2023 as a gauge for any potential release information. If we look at how long ED has been working on the FA-18C and of course the F-16C, which are also very complicated machines, we have some waiting to do yet, I think. And I think it will be worth the wait if the pre-delivery promises and teasers are anything to go by, and I expect more of them as the year progresses.
Sabre 2, Nellis Tower, and you are clear across runway 3 left, hold short of 3 right on Alpha, and report when ready to copy.
Of course, based on previous videos that I've published on the topic, concern has been expressed about the sheer lethality of this advanced Gen 4 aircraft simply wiping the floor with its counterparts in the multiplayer environment. One of the challenges for developers of this kind of simulation is that in real life there's no such thing as a level playing field anyway. In the combat flight arena, this is particularly true. It's a battle of constant evolution and getting the edge over your opponent at almost any cost. Not just with individual aircraft, of course, but with the sum total of the technology that you can bring to bear. We've seen the effectiveness of this in recent decades, of course, and by contrast, we've also seen perhaps the less than stellar effectiveness of some of our traditional competitors in the marketplace in this area. I think the Red Force situation is going to play out rather interesting over the coming years, I think, both in real-world situations and, of course, in the game as well. Regardless of the political landscape in the real world, though, the Eurofighter will be a highly interesting addition to our stable of aircraft, and as previously mentioned, is a huge fan favorite of the community, just as the AH-64 is for the helicopter fans.
Nose 437.
Stand by, Cat 1 440.
And speaking of the Apache ED, let's transition to that topic. They have been doing some additional modeling work on the pilot and the CPG apparel. In the screenshots that you should be seeing, They have included here new pilot and co-pilot gunner models for the first-person perspective. They have completed both multicam and the universal camouflage available, and they are currently working on gesture animations and fitting the models into the cockpit. The basic movements for the pilot and operator are complete, but there are still some more advanced gestures like transfer of controls, idles, working with MPD, and a few others to boot that are left to do. The Apache is of course a joy to fly, and these continued immersive features add obviously additional layers to our flight experiences, which is of course exciting. ED plugged again some more recent campaigns, which I've actually already mentioned over the last few weeks, and I won't rehash old ground on that basis. But some of you may have noticed that Baltic Dragon and of course author Kevin Miller of the Raven 1 series have been throwing up the odd image for the upcoming Dominant Fury campaign on Twitter and other social media platforms. The first mission ends with a Case 3 recovery, but don't let that put you off. Remember, WAG showed us that we can use the ACLS and make a ham sandwich on the supercarrier module as we come into land. Now, as Budgie from the Air Warfare group pointed out, and I stole the line, if we can just get Kevin Miller maybe deepfaked on the LSO platform, we'll all be in good stead. Maybe we can even fake WAGs or Jello as an air boss. The possibilities are endless. Either way, this campaign is one I'm very much looking forward to, so stay tuned.
Engine room takeaways for a Tomcat.
Many of you noticed that I was able to produce a midweek video showcasing some of the amazing scenery from RAZBAM's South Atlantic map. While the images I presented only represent a fraction of the map, I can assure you it is a lot of fun to fly in, and there will no doubt be some tweaks before the final product is actually released. Now, there were many questions in the comment sections, and to be fair, I'm not qualified to answer a lot of those questions. I'm just not privy to timelines and developmental details. I did get a slot to test it along with many other people who have kindly assisted in the map's development, like Juice, for example, from the Air Warfare group, who got a little plug at the end of the video there. But perhaps when it is finally released, we can sit down with Spectre and Ripper and maybe chat about the work that they did and fire some more specific questions at them that maybe can answer some of the questions you may have had. It's obviously laborious and it's time-consuming work, and as Spectre said, it's also been 4 years for him thus far, and I know he has painstakingly recreated objects just for this map that didn't get showcased, and maybe again we can chat about some of those things in the future. In the interim, do check out the Air Combat Experiences episode 27 for some more insight on the map's development and progress. Now, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't reflect on the fact that it's been 40 years since the Falklands conflict, and there was a great interview from the Fighter Pilot podcast this week where Jello interviews Commander Tim Bobsleigh Gedge, who's Royal Navy retired, and his experiences on aspects of the conflict. It's well worth a listen, as a lot of Jello's interviews are, and of course a wealth of info for those of us with a passion for air combat and combat simulation. While we're on the topic of RAZBAM, Ron Zambrono, the head of RAZBAM Simulations, continues to share some interesting images of the Super Tucano, as well as aspects of the F-15E, which we mentioned last week as well, and of course looks set for a 2022 release if everything goes according to plan. The Tucano looks pretty amazing and is part of a number of things being worked on by the team's lead designers. I should also add here that there is going to be an assets pack for the South Atlantic map, which people were asking about in terms of historical objects and AI modules, so on and so forth. Again, stay tuned for more information from RAZBAM on that. I think that brings us to the end of another DCS World Situation Report. Once again, I just want to thank you all for tuning in and sticking with the channel. I really appreciate the support, the feedback in the comment section, and the likes and shares, of course. The channel is now eligible for the Super Thanks. I'm starting to feel like Ward Carroll here, which is another way to support the channel and the work we're doing here, so feel free or not, as the case may be. Have a great weekend, everyone. Carry on flying, and we'll see you next time on the DCS Situation Report.